Welcome to a brand new season of Inside the 605. I'm Jason Andera, and this will be our special preview episode for the month of December, where we'll take an overview of what to expect in South Dakota high school basketball, both boys and girls, for the 24-25 season. Now, once we get into January, we'll do weekly episodes, and in those weekly episodes we'll feature 605 Sports' Ryan Deal with the Real Deal's take each week. We will also take a look at top performers from each week, and we'll look forward to the best games coming up over the next 7 days. But in this episode, we're going to concentrate on an overview, the initial preseason rankings. I'll break all that down, and if you stay with us till the end, I'll even give you my predictions on who I think has the best chance to win it all at the end of this season. Predictions sure to go wrong. Before we get into breaking down the initial rankings and some of the top players in each class of South Dakota high school basketball, let's bring in Ryan Deal of 605 Sports. Ryan, I know you like a lot of sports, but basketball season is pretty special, isn't it?
That's 100% correct. I enjoy all the sports I cover, and you definitely want to exhaust all your effort and energy into every sport you cover. And love football season and baseball season and stuff. But there's just something different for me when basketball season hits. It's just a different feel for me, and it's been like that for a lot of years. And certainly when the calendar flips to December, and people probably don't like the long winters, but I enjoy them, because we're always at a basketball game, we're always at a gym and whatever. So, yeah, certainly love the basketball season.
So, Ryan, you do a great job of helping to put these polls together, and I gotta think it would be interesting to see how these are tabulated without anybody playing any games, especially in Boys A, where you've got the defending champions in Hamlin, and then you've got the team that went undefeated until they lost to Hamlin in Class A, both getting strong support for number one team in Class A boys. How did that all unfold?
Yeah, that was certainly fun to see the votes come in for Class A boys. Hamlin, Sioux Falls Christian, like you said, returning a lot off of those teams from last year, meant the state championship game. As the votes were coming in, it was just back and forth. Hamlin was one, and Sioux Falls Christian was one. They were kind of flip-flopping back and forth. So certainly was not surprised that those were the two top teams to start things off when it comes to the polls and everything. But the great thing is those two teams will play each other more than likely twice during the regular season. Once in the regular season, and then they'll probably match up at the DAC-12 NEC conference clash. Much like they did last year, they played twice during the regular season, and then met in the state championship. Hamlin, lost both in the regular season, but then got the one that mattered most in the state championship. So certainly in Class A boys, when you start talking about that class, you got to talk about Hamlin and Sioux Falls Christian. Obviously, there's some other good teams, right there behind those guys. But that'll definitely be fun to see how that shakes out with those two teams, really highlighting that class and everything.
Well, speaking of interesting tabulations, Boys B was also a very close vote for number one. You had support for Viborg Hurley, a very good young team, and then Castlewood finished third at state last year and have maybe the best player in the class back on their team. How did that all go?
Yeah, kind of similar to A boys. Castlewood and Viborg Hurley were just kind of going back and forth as the votes were coming in, and I'm certainly not surprised at that. Both those teams bring back a lot off of last year's state tournament runs. Both very well coached. Castlewood with Paul Rosh, and Viborg Hurley with a new coach this year with Shane Warwick. Everybody knows what he's all about in the state when it comes to training and coaching basketball players and everything. So certainly with Class B boys, you got to start with Castlewood and Viborg Hurley, and then there's obviously some good teams coming up right after that with Gregory, Del Rapids St. Mary's, and Wessington Springs. So B boys is always fun. Everybody knows that's kind of the class I kind of follow the most, and certainly Castlewood and Viborg Hurley, two teams deserving of those top two rankings and everything.
Well, the girls' side, we also had some interesting rankings come out last week, and all the state champions from last year, O'Gorman, Vermilion, Centerville, got #1 votes coming into this season, but I know there was also some other difference of opinions on who should be the #1 team on the girls' side as well.
Yeah, the closest one when you look at the girls' polls was O'Gorman, Brandon Valley in Class AA. O'Gorman got the #1 nod. Obviously won the state championship last year. Lost some good players off of that team from last year, but O'Gorman just reloads. They're going to be solid again. Brandon Valley, they're going to be solid as well. So certainly was not surprised as those polls kind of shuck out with AA. Girls, O'Gorman and Brandon Valley being at the top. But yeah, and A girls as well. Vermilion and Centerville, a couple state championship teams from last year. Certainly deserving of the #1 ranking. But as we've kind of seen in recent years with A and B girls, there's just kind of a lot of parity in those two classes. I don't remember last time we had a repeat champ. So it's going to be fun to see that shake out with those two classes.
Well, later in the show, we're going to really dive into some of the top players to watch throughout this season for 24-25. But there are a couple that are really special. Who are some players in both boys and girls basketball that we really need to know about going into the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I did something recently on some of the top girls players. We'll do something on the top boys players. I know you put a list together as well. And you're right. I mean, there's just good players throughout the whole state, and it's really hard to just kind of pinpoint a couple, I guess. But for this, let's start with girls. Ashlyn Copel from Wagner, just a junior, she's had a whale of a not just a basketball career, but athletics in general, with being a 4-time high jump champ for Class A. But people don't know about her. They should Google her because she's a top ranked recruit in the class of 2026. I'm not going to start rattling off all of the offers she has because I'm probably going to forget some of the schools, but it's a lot of big time names throughout the whole country showing interest in her and giving her offers and everything. So she's certainly deserving of the recognition she's receiving, and she's going to lead Wagner this year. So it'll be fun to watch her and her this season and the rest of her career unfold. And then for boys, Griffin Goodberry, Sioux Falls Christian, going to have signed play at South Dakota State. A 6'10". I think they got him listed at 6'11" on the roster. Just a very skilled forward for those guys, and he's fun to watch. And obviously with Sioux Falls Christian, he's got some good pieces around him. So it'll be fun to see how things kind of play out for him and his team this year, because he's a very talented player. So it's going to be fun to watch his this season and the rest of his career at South Dakota State unfold.
Well, Ryan, in January, we're going to visit on a weekly basis about some of the best games coming up. But here in December, there are some tremendous events to look out for as well. What are a couple events that you have your eyes on for this December?
Yeah, here next week, the Dakota Nation Invitational out in Rapid City. We will be out there, 605 Sports and Live Ticket. We'll be out there providing some coverage throughout the tournament. It's obviously a basketball tournament first and foremost, but there's so many cool events that go on out there for the student athletes and everybody involved. So we'll be covering that one. Make sure to follow along for some coverage about that next week and everything. And then, after Christmas, the Hoop City Classic in Mitchell has kind of become one of those, you circle on the calendar because it's cool because it's a lot of in-state teams facing in-state teams. But the one wrinkle with that one is they'll bring in a lot of the out-of-state teams to face off against some South Dakota teams. So that's always a fun event because you're getting a good mix of the South Dakota teams and players against some of the out-of-state teams and players and everything. So that's always a fun one right after Christmas.
Well, thanks, Ryan, for your time. It was a blast, and I know we'll have a lot of time to talk about the upcoming events over the next couple of months in South Dakota high school basketball. But thanks for your time once again.
Absolutely. Talk to you later, Jason.
All right, Ryan Deal, the real deal of 605 Sports. Make sure to check him out each and every day on 605sports.com. All right, let's get into the preseason rankings. We'll go class by class. We'll start in Girls B and not only talk about the rankings, but some players to watch, some game changers in each class, so you know who to expect to make the big plays throughout the season. Let's start in girls Class B. Number 1, Centerville. They came into the season as the defending state champions. They were the 3 seed coming into last year's state tournament, but ran the table to capture that state championship in sort of an unlikely fashion, but they really showed their upside. And this season, they have 3 returning senior starters, including
Althea Gust,
Emma Marshall, and Kira Austin, who all played big roles in that championship run. Their head coach, Tucker Tornberg, has built Centerville into a contender after high school, didn't even offer girls basketball for a short stint there at Centerville, and now they come in as one of the teams to beat. They've done a lot of work over the summers to really improve this team and make girls basketball really special in Centerville. They've even taken trips to Louisville, Okoboji, Wisconsin Dells in order to try to compete against some of the really good teams to prepare them for the season. These kids for Centerville have put a lot of time and effort into improving their game in basketball, and so they come in as the number 1 team. When I talk to coaches, they all agree that this Centerville team looks like the team to beat in Class B. But at number 2, never overlook Tom Young and what he does with the Ethan Rustlers. These guys always play great defense. Yes, they did lose Ava Lingaman, the player of the year in Class B, but they've got 2 really good players back, both averaging double digits last season. One came over from Hanson, Tizia Hawkins, but they also have Marissa Storm, who did a really good job last year for Ethan as well. And with some young talent coming up and that brand of defense that they always play, I expect Ethan to be one of those teams in the top 5 who are always a threat to make a run in the playoffs. In at number 3, Sanborn Central Woonsocket. Now, this was a fairly pedestrian team last year, pretty average, but they did have a lot of talent coming up, and now they have a couple of really good players joining them who played on James Valley Christian last year. Kaylee Robinson and Alexa Gertz, who were all-state type competitors last year, and now join Liz Boshi, a 6-footer in the post, and they become one of the more talented teams in Class B. Parkston, they went 16-6 last year in Class A. They moved down to Class B this year and have all but 1 player back, including their electric guard, Lauren Ziebert. So I really think Parkston could be a team, easily that could move up to one of the top spots in Class B. Right now they start out at number 4. And then we've got Lyman in at number 5, made the state tournament last year. They lose a D1 player, but maybe, just maybe, they get better as an overall team because they've got some young guards who are looking very good. And then you combine that with Max Scott, one of the best players in all of the state regardless of class. But they've also got Brooke Palmer, Jordan Scott, and a very deep roster filled with high basketball IQ players. So look out for the Raiders. I also want to talk about Arlington, a team that's getting votes. They made it into the state tournament last year as the top seed. They lost a couple of players due to transfer, but they do have Jalen Huntemer back, and they had a very young squad last year. So I think Arlington will be a factor in this year's Class B. Gayville Vollen, Andy Central, Dakota Christian, with Brower back, has done a great job. Warner got a vote as well. So a lot of teams in Class B looking to find a way to make it to the state tournament and then seeing what they can do. Let's take a look at the game changers in Class B. There are plenty of them. We talked about Gust of Centerville. She's highlighted here as one of the top players to watch. Very diverse offensive game. She could easily put up 20 points in a system built for her to do that, but she does her job very well. She is defensively one of the top perimeter defenders in the entire area, a very much committed leader on this team inside and outside of the gym, and puts a lot of effort into it. So she is one that we have to talk about. But the rest of this list, very good. Liz Boshi, we talked about. Sanborn Central, Woonsocket, big post with upside. Josie Brower out of Andy Central, Dakota Christian, almost averaged a double-double as a junior last year. But Emerson Eppard, Chester area hasn't gotten a lot of attention as one of the top teams in the class, but they have been very good. And as a junior, an all-around player who averaged 16.5 points per game, 10.5 rebounds per game, a great athlete, could make Chester a tough team to play every time they go at it. Alexa Gertz with Sanborn Central Woonsocket, an honorable mention All-State player last year, averaged almost 16 points per game, will play a big role this year with her new team. Taziah Hawkins transferred from Hanson to Ethan, put up 12 points a game last year in Class A, should be very solid for Tom Young and Ethan this year. Jalen Huntemer, just as a sophomore last year, both offensively and defensively, a leader for Arlington. Brindley Landis out of Coleman Egan coming off an outstanding volleyball season, but she could be one of the best players by the time we're done with this. A good swing guard forward who can not only defend but put up points in bunches for Coleman Egan. Hazel Luthmers, she's looking for a breakout junior season. She's a 6-footer, can do it all. Coach Brandon Pitts says she can score from all spots on the floor, and is really an improved passer this year as well. She put up 19.3 points per game last season, and I think, as a better passer this year, really could get her team to a different level this season. Emma Marshall out of Centerville, she gets overlooked sometimes, but just as good of an excellent presence in the paint as anybody in Class B, and also a great rebounder on both ends. Kaylee Robinson, an outstanding season last year, almost averaging a double-double, will have a huge impact for the Blackhawks this year. Max Scott already talked about the Augie commit, who averaged 17.3 points per game for Lyman, a very skilled player. And then Marissa Storm of Ethan, 15 points per game last year. She kind of was in the shadow of Ava Lingaman, and not her fault. Ava was a great shooter, but I think Marissa Storm sees more opportunities this year and could be part of one of the best backcourts in the entire class. Let's move on to Class A now, girls. And last season's Class A tournament was epic. You had undefeated teams, you had teams that went on a roll, star power on almost every team, but it was Vermilion who came through as the state champions, and they've got 2 of their key players back this year. Those 2 key players are USD commit Brooke Jensen, who has done a great job of just being an all-around player. She can score, and in fact, as a sophomore, scored even more than she did last year as a junior when she really found her role as a leader on this team. And then you've also got Casey Hansen, who missed some time due to injury over the last couple of years, but has been a really good player, is going to go on and play college basketball next year. And then freshman sensation Taylor Roovers, last year as an 8th grader, really set the tone. She actually set the record at Vermilion for most assists in a season, but she did it as an 8th grader. So as a freshman, you expect her game to become even more potent. Sioux Falls Christian comes in at number 2, one of the most well-balanced teams in the class. There's a reason they've been a 20-win team over the last 3 seasons. They are a very tall team and a very good team in the backcourt, a great combination, which makes them one of the top teams to watch. Then you've got Hamlin and Wagner, came in tied for 3. I'll tell you what, both of these 2 teams have a lot of upside this year. Hamlin should get back to their winning ways after last season's uncharacteristic 8-loss season, but with Addison Neuendorf back, and then you add a couple of players into the mix that they got through transfer, they could be a very, very dangerous team. And then Wagner, they probably have the top player in the entire class, maybe in the entire state, in Ashlyn Copel, the 6'3 junior post who does a little bit of everything. Had an outstanding offseason, getting notoriety throughout the nation. So she's ready to put up a huge year as a junior this year. But if some of their younger players can step up, look for the Red Raiders once again to be one of those teams that are causing problems late in the season. And then at number 5, Maipia Luta, formerly Red Cloud. What an outstanding season last year. Just 1 loss on the regular season before losing in the quarterfinals. They've had an .888 winning percentage over the last 3 seasons. Their head coach, Matt Rama, has done a fantastic job, has another great team this year. Junior guard, the 6-footer, Ashlyn Carlo Blunt. She went for 17 points a game last year. Jodine Big Crow Hunter, also an all-state type of player, right by her side, averaging almost 17 points per game. They might be the most underrated team in this top 5. And then you've got teams outside the top 5 that could easily be inside the top 5. Sisseton has another solid team. Krista Lawnhager back is one of the most dominant post players we've seen. And then Ruby Rice, Tara Nelson, 2 players who have done a great job getting Sisseton to the state tournament the last couple of years. They are back. Lennox, they have some injury issues to work through. They have some younger players they expected to do big things who might not be able to do those because of injuries, but still a very excellent young roster. Ryan Hansen, Andy Peters, Carly Bosma, Gavin Herlin are all leading the way for the Orioles. MVP, yes, they don't have Emily Fox back this year, but Reagan Russ is, and she was a versatile player and a great player in her own right last year. Could lead MVP to a team that could really be knocking on the door of another state tournament this year. And then how about Dakota Valley? They might be that sneaky team that makes a run, a very young and talented roster. All right, let's take a look at our game changers for Class A. We mentioned the highlighted player here, Ashlyn Kopel. Outstanding offseason. She just absolutely blew up as far as her offers. You name almost any state and any school in the nation, and she got an offer from them this summer. Had a terrific AAU season, and now really moves into a leadership position with Wagner as somebody who can do a little bit of everything. But let's take a look at the rest of Class A. Ashlyn Blunt, a 6-foot guard who is definitely a scorer but can do everything across the court. Brooke Jensen, we talked about her becoming a more well-rounded player, went over 1,000 points last season, and she got a commitment to a Division I school at USD. So very good threat for Vermilion on the outside. Krista Lonhager, talked about her, a 20.9 rebound a game player last year. Addison Neuendorf, another one who can score first but passes very well from the point. Almost a 1 or a 2 guard, interchangeable for Addison Neuendorf, and went for over 20 points per game last year. Ella Otten, 17 points a game as an 8th grader last year. I expect her to have a huge year now as a freshman. Taylor Ruvers, she set the single season assist record at Vermilion with 123 assists last year. She is electric running the point. Reagan Russ, 17.6 rebound player who was playing alongside of Emily Fox last year. High energy player. She'll create opportunities not only for herself but for the rest of the offense. She is committed to play at Northern State next year. Morgan Shepard, just a freshman this year, but has already played significant minutes as a varsity player for Flandreau. It's kind of her team this year with her sister on to play at SDSU. She's 6'2", has those guard type of skills, a great all-around player, Morgan Shepard. Addie Stephenson was an all-state player in Class B last year, moves up to Class A this year with Hamlin, should not be overlooked. A 16-point-a-game scorer last year. She's going to be very good. And Avery Reitz, stats sometimes tell the story, sometimes they don't tell the whole story. A good rebounding guard who can really control the game on both sides of the court for one of the best overall teams in Class A in Sioux Falls Christian. Let's take a look at Class AA now. And last year, O'Gorman completed a wonderful undefeated season. They had Molly Abdush leading the way, the player of the year in Class AA. But once they got to the state tournament, we saw how good this class can be. They were challenged, and now a very different team this year, but they still come in as the number 1 team. Only 3 first-place votes compared to Brandon Valley's 9 first-place votes, but they got the overall mark at number 1 because Brandon got a lot more votes that were spread out throughout the top 5. So O'Gorman gets that nod, and they've got some really good talent coming back, even though they might be new faces to you. Ruby Moore, future SDSU player, coming back for them. Sydney Terveen had a great year last year. Sadie Merriman moves over from Harrisburg to O'Gorman, and Julia Eggert, one of the best all-around athletes, great defender, all back for O'Gorman this year. Let's talk about Brandon Valley. The Lynx really hit their stride at the end of last season. This year, 3 key starters back, including Olivia Paget. She is emerging as one of the best players in the state. And I think this team's strength really comes into the fact that they are a deep team. They can play several different players who play several different positions, which make them a tough matchup for almost any team in the state. Washington comes in at number 3. They had an uncharacteristic year where didn't win as many games as they normally do, but I think they've got a very strong backcourt this year led by Grace Peterson. And the Warriors could get some contributions from younger players. They've got a couple freshmen coming up who I think could be a big impact players for Washington this year, but they've got steady improvement from the rest of the players who start on this team. Rylan Kennett, Dana Harp, Claire Woods, all really good players who have improved since last year. Stevens comes in. They almost upset O'Gorman in the state tournament last year. And Talia Porter, their best player, is back once again this season. They came up a little short last year, but with Porter, Brittany Jones, Finley Love, all back to make a terrific backcourt, they will rely on that backcourt to give teams problems. If they get a little play in their front court, watch out. Stevens could be one of those teams on their way up. Jefferson has had success in the postseason. She does a fantastic job as the season goes on. They get better and better, and they start this year with one star back, Brinley Altenberg, just a sophomore. She'll take on more of a leadership role this year. They've got one other starter back, but they've got a lot of new young returning players who will need to step up for them to stay in the top 5. Harrisburg, Pierre, Spearfish all get votes. They all have reasons to be promising this year, but I say some of these teams that didn't get votes in the top 5 are the teams you have to watch out for. Aberdeen Central, 2-star players on their team. Lauren Burkhart is one that to really watch out for, and Taryn Hermanson as well. Brookings is sneaky good. I mean, they're not going to blow teams out this year, but they're going to compete with everybody. I think they're going to have a much better season than last year. Rapid City Central was kind of restarting over the last couple of years. I think their young players could make them a very dangerous team. And then Mitchell, yes, I know they lose Sawyer Stabner, their player who did everything for them last year, but they have a couple of really good guards back, including Addie Simpson, who could make them a very tough team to beat. So I like a lot of teams, even though they didn't get votes in the top 5. Let's take a look at the game changers in Class AA in our highlighted player, Talia Porter. We talked about her. 19.8 points per game, can shoot inside, can slice. She can really be anything you need her to be. If you need a guard, if you need a post player, if you need just a defender, she can do it all. Look out for Talia Porter. The rest of this list, we have to talk about Brinley Altenberg. Again, a player getting Power 5 offers as a freshman last year, averaged 17 points per game. This year, it's going to look a lot different. Defenses are going to be focused on her without Jaden Dunn in the middle. But she is a very talented player. Watch out for Brinley Altenberg. Lauren Burkhart averaged 10 points, 2 rebounds last year, but is committed to play basketball at SDSU. You know she is ready for a huge next couple of years. She can play the perimeter and knock down shots, or she can be a facilitator, a really versatile player in Lauren Burkhart. Lennox Dupree, second-team All-State player last year, an all-tourney player as well as a junior, can knock down shots, can handle the ball. She's really probably one of the more underrated guards in Class AA. Taryn Hermanson is a junior post player, dominant, consistent post player. She's going to draw a lot of attention in the lane this year, which could open things up for Aberdeen Central on the outside. Leah Landry had a huge freshman year, averaged double digits, almost 11 boards per game as well as a freshman. So watch out. She will be one of the players to watch for Rapid City Central this year. Ruby Moore is going to take on a much bigger role for O'Gorman this year. Again, just a really smart player, heady player, and without Molly Abdouche, will take over as more of a leader this year as well. Olivia Paget for Brandon Valley. The stats aren't going to blow you away. 13.8 points per game. She meant so much more, led them all the way to championship night last year with a young Brandon Valley team. Grace Peterson can knock the shots down from the outside. Great backcourt defender. Again, a 13-point-a-game scorer. Watch out for her leading Washington this year. Addie Simpson, again, a 13-point scorer, a great shot from the outside, has already committed to play at Wayne State next year. A very talented upside for Addie Simpson. And then Logan Smith, the point guard. She can score and she can also rebound. She's headed to play Division II NSIC basketball as well at Southwest Minnesota State University. So watch out for Logan Smith. Time to move to boys basketball. And again, we'll start in Class B, go up to A, and then finish in Class AA. And stay with us. I'll make some bold predictions to end the show on who's going to win it all in all 6 classes. Let's go in Boys B, where Castlewood comes in with 8 first-place votes as the number 1 team in the preseason poll. Brian Lowy, the 6'9" post, went for 15.5 points per game last year, double-digit rebounder. He'll be the centerpiece of this Warrior team that went 22-4 and finished 3rd at state last year. But watch out, their point guard, Jamison Kessler, will also be a key for this team. Viborg Hurley, the Cougars made a run to the state tournament with several key sophomores last year. And their star, Nick Hansen, who was just a junior last year, comes in for a big senior season this season. And that experience that they have should turn into even bigger expectations for Viborg Hurley this year. Shane Warwick takes over as their head coach, and I'm looking out for a fantastic year for the Cougars as they play a very tough schedule. Number 3, Gregory. I'll tell you what, if you just look at talent, they might be a team to watch out for. Had a 20-win season last year and returned 4 starters, including Cruz Clunt and Noah Bearshield. Both should see a bump in their point production this year, but really 9 of their top 10 players from a year ago are back this season. So Gregory, definitely a team to watch out for. Del Rapids St. Mary's. They've got some top senior talent on this team. Maverick LeBrun and Trevor Beckman, both capable of 20-point nights anytime they step on the court. And they are going to be leaders once again for this team. Look for Tremere Hansen, a junior guard, to really evolve as a 3rd option on this team, who on some nights could be option number 1. A lot of talent for the Cardinals. Wessington Springs might be one of the more athletic teams in the class. They've got great balance as well. Parker Graff had an outstanding sophomore season last year, and now as a junior, I look for him to see a lot more attention from defenders, but step his game up even more. He led them all the way to the state tournament. I would expect they have a shot to do that again this season. How about the defending champs from Howard? Just outside the top 5, but they only have 1 starter back, but that starter is Luke Kepsel, a really good player. I look for him and Carson Hinker along with Austin Severson to play a much bigger role to see if Howard has another run in their future. And then DeSmet. How can we talk about Class B without talking about DeSmet? This is a team that year in, year out finds a way to get it done in March. A much newer looking team this year, but they will play that tough brand of defense. Jeff Gruenhagen always has them in the mix by the end of the year. And White River, a team that has made the state tournament for so many years in a row. Again, a team you can't talk about the class without talking about them. They have a much different look this year. This will be a huge challenge for Eldon Marshall to keep that streak alive. Let's talk about the players to watch in Class B right now. We mentioned Nick Hansen as the guy to watch here, but really Brian Lowy as well. These are 2 guys who are going to see the best defenses and put up the numbers despite those defenses. 2 big presences in Class B to watch out for. But let's take a look at the rest of the list. Noah Bearshield of Gregory, a guy who can score. Trevin Beckman, a guy who scored almost 20 points per game last year for St. Mary's. A huge shooter who can also drive and take it right to the hoop. Parker Graff of Wessington Springs, we mentioned him, just ready to have another breakout season as a junior. Spencer Carstens of Gayville-Vollen is a guy who his team hasn't had a tremendous run, but he has been an all-state type of player for them. Noah Kipley, Leola Frederick, they're a team that's getting some looks in the voting so far this year. He's one of the reasons why. Cruz Clunt, one of the better guards in the class for Gregory. Luke Kepsel, he does a little bit of everything inside and outside, but especially defense and physical presence for Howard. He's going to be a guy to watch. Brian Lowy, again, a double-double machine who he's going to have a couple dunks a game, probably at least 2 or 3. Ben Weber of Bridgewater Emory, another guy who can score from all points on the court, inside, outside, mid-range, terrific toolkit for him to make Bridgewater Emory a team to watch. And then Wesley Whitler, coming off of a fantastic football season. He's also an all-state type player for Sully Buttes and will lead them to a strong year in 24-25. All right, time to talk about Class A basketball now. And last season, Class A was really good. I mean, so many good teams, but they were overshadowed by how impressive Sioux Falls Christian and Hamlin were. And they played a couple times during the regular season. Sioux Falls Christian won those games. we got into the postseason, and Hamlin flipped the script. So who do you put number one? Well, we came in with the first votes of the year, and Sioux Falls Christian earned that spot. They had a 25-game winning streak before losing to Hamlin in that final game last season. But they have all 5 starters back, including SDSU commit Griffin Goodberry. This is a very athletic team with very few weaknesses. Hamlin has 4 starters back. They are that lone team that found a way to beat the Chargers. I think I've got my eyes on them to make another really strong run. Easton Neuendorf, Evan Stormo, Jackson Wadsworth, Zach Van Meteren, Dawson Noem. A great place to start this team, and they've got a deep bench as well. Love this team. They've got a shot to beat anybody that they play against. Dakota Valley comes in at number 3. It was Luke Bruns and Logan Collette who had outstanding years last year, who both have improved their game this year. They lead a dynamic backcourt, but I think you're going to see more production from some of their newcomers this year. They're going to have to find a new inside presence for the first time in the last couple of years since Jackson Wingert has owned that spot over the past couple of seasons when Dakota Valley has been so good. Watch out for a pair of 8th graders as well who are going to be on the varsity squad. I don't know how much they're going to play right away, but Aaron Bruns and Peyton Sorensen are 2 very talented young players who are going to start getting in the mix for Dakota Valley very soon. Rapid City Christian comes in at number 4. The Comets return a lot of veteran leadership after finishing 4th at state last year. Julius Frog, Benson Kiefer, Simon Kiefer, they are stars. They all have that star potential, but when you add Aiden Roberts and Wes Schlebach, that rounds out a terrific starting 5, one of the best starting 5s you'll see in all of Class A. Pine Ridge comes in at 5, and they may be underrated at that spot as well. Marvin Richard III, a monster sophomore season, averaging 20 points per game. But Anthony Steele, Dominic Ghostbear, all strong options as well. It's not just a one-man team. They think they'll miss a little bit of their size that they had in the middle last year, but they've got some young players who they hope can step into those roles. You've got Lennox, you've got Sioux Valley, Del Rapids, Vermilion, St. Thomas More. These teams we are used to talking about each and every year as contenders. They're getting votes to start the season off, but I really like the athleticism of Lennox. Sioux Valley and Maverick Nelson always have a chance to be good. They play an extremely tough schedule and make themselves ready for the postseason. Del Rapids maybe has some of the best height in the class. Jack Cloth, Tad Chaden, both playing in the middle, who are strong presences. And how about Vermilion? They've got Trey Hansen. He's done it all. He's started every year since he's been in high school as a junior, looking for a huge year, and they've got some talent around him as well. Plus, you got to look at Winter. Didn't get any votes, but this is a team that basically has 4 starters back, won 19 games last year. I would look for them to be a contender in Class A as well. Let's take a look at the players who really have a chance to make games changed around. That's why we call them game changers here on Inside the 605. And Griffin Goodberry, I mean, we can't say enough about this guy. He's listed at 6'10", 6'11" now maybe, and can shoot from the outside. That makes him a really tough guard, and almost anybody in the state, it's a mismatch once you get him on Griffin Goodberry. But 20 points a game last year, I fear that he could even do better this year. Ben Brooks out of Madison, an outstanding athlete. He's going to play football at SDSU next year, but he is very dangerous on the basketball court as well. Luke Bruns, he was an 18-point-a-game scorer as the second option last year. I think he's a 20-point-a-game scorer this year in his senior year. Julius Frog, just a skilled stretch big guy. He's got a great shot from the outside and an underrated game in the mid-range, and that's something that is a dying breed. So look for him to expand his game to become a really solid shooter from the outside, whether it's mid-range or 3-point shots. Sean Hammerbeck, he has a little injury on his hand, and his head coach, Brett Gardner, said he's a little worried about that, but I'll tell you what, Hammerbeck is not worried about that. He's going to set for another big double-double year this year for Winter. Trey Hansen has been an outstanding scorer for Vermilion. Will come back and really wreak some havoc this year for the Tanagers. Benson Kiefer, he had some injury issues last year, but still found a way to score in bunches, and he works so hard on the defensive end, and that's why he's on this list, because he's such a good two-way player. Easton Neuendorf, Nobody handles the ball quite like Easton. He is such a controlled point guard who also can score the basketball with 15 points a game last year, 7 assists per game, and is deadly on the defensive side as well. Marvin Richard III, maybe the top scoring threat in this entire class. Like I said, a 20-plus point a game scorer, but also dishes the ball out and hits the boards as well. An outstanding athlete for Pine Ridge. Cole Snyder, he probably is the fewest points per game on this list, but such great range, such great defensive skills, such great athleticism. He is somebody you have to game plan for when you're playing against them. And then how about Kyle Virtue of Custer? He has really led that team to improvement over the last couple of seasons. Last year went for 17.6 points per game, and gives Custer an opportunity to be an improved team yet again this year. Let's round it out with Class AA boys. And again, last season it was Mitchell with just the one loss on the season, cruised into the championship game, won the state championship, and did it with almost no seniors. So what does that make them? Well, it makes them the favorite coming into this year, and that's exactly what they are. All 13 first place votes go to Mitchell. They are the overwhelming favorite in this class. They bring back Marcus Talley and Colton Smith, two of the best players in the state, but they've got a great surrounding cast. Washington comes in at number 2. Last year they came into the season with a ton of questions, had a really slow start. This year, quite the opposite. They return almost everybody and come in with a lot of expectations with Tommy Hoffman, Lucas Johnson, Jace Woods. All of those guys are all conference, all state type of players who give Washington a great chance to get out to a great start. Lincoln had a little bit of a down year last year. I expect them to bounce right back. They don't have a ton of starters back, but with new head coach Luke Hanneman, they still have a full cupboard, and that's because of the Sams. Sam DeGroot, Sam Erickson, they could both develop into all-state type of players with their roles this season. And then you add in Eddie Knoll and a deep rotation. This gives them everything they need to succeed. I talked to a lot of coaches out there, and they all say, watch out, don't sleep on Lincoln. The number 3 team in this initial polls is the Patriots. Number 4, you've got Huron with Blake Elwine. This guy had a big year as a sophomore last year, but I think he takes another step up, and he's really grown and has gotten stronger. He's gotten more accurate as a shooter. He really could take that step up to be a player of the year type of candidate this year in Class AA as a junior. But his supporting cast is outstanding. Look for Anderson Porish, who comes in as a sophomore, Colton McNeil, a lot of guys who can give Huron a chance to compete on a daily basis. They will need to get some depth if they want to be one of those teams that is finding a way to play on Friday night and beyond for something meaningful at the state tournament. O'Gorman had a down year last year, an uncharacteristic down year, but this year they've got 4 real key players who all had starting experience who are back for them this year. Newen Doot, Austin, and Caleb Terveen, really the key players back for O'Gorman this year. I think their backcourt really is strong this year, and then you add guys like Doot who have really excelled in the front court, and that makes for a dangerous team. Then you've got Brandon Valley. They made a run last season with a really good inside-outside play. Didn't get as much love in the polls as I thought they would, but they've got 3 starters back, including Landon Delaney, Aiden Zur, and Braden Miller, and then you've got Briggs Knutson. Well, Braden Miller and Briggs Knutson both started part-time really last year and saw time, but a really deep team with them. A lot of good athletes that they can bring off the bench. I look for Brandon Valley to be a team, especially by the end of the year, to be in the mix. Harrisburg, they got a lot of fresh faces this year, but this is a team, as you know, always full of athletes, and they are led by, Aiden Costain, Noah Krull. They've got most of their experience off the bench last year, but this year will be more starters. And then Isaiah Tapp, Caden Anderson, I think will step up and have good years for Harrisburg as well. Roosevelt getting some votes early on. I think their inside play with Akeem Moto and Memphis Bylander are 2 of the best inside players that anybody has, and they can both move outside as well. And then Jamer Tiger, another guy who's got some experience in the backcourt, and then you add some newcomers to that court for Roosevelt, and they're going to be very good. Don't sleep on Jefferson. This is the team. I think they've got something that most teams don't have, and that is some beef in the lane. And they got it with Mason Payne and Eddie Whiting, a couple of 6'6" guys who will take up a lot of room. And then you add some good players in the perimeter, some veterans like Ethan Swenson, and guys like Damaris Fields, who have had good outside games for the last couple of years for Jefferson. I think they've got some really nice balance this year. Don't be surprised to see Jefferson make a run. And then I like Stevens and Sturgis as well out west to be teams that I think could evolve as the season goes on and be teams that we're talking about in March as well, especially Sturgis. I mean, that's a team, a lot of guys back on this team, including Ryan Heinert, who is just an absolute baller, and they're going to come out a little stronger than they did last season. So Sturgis, one of those sneaky teams in Class AA to talk about. Let's talk about the game changers in Class AA now. We've got Marcus Talley highlighted here because he's got that player of the year potential, can distribute the ball at 4 assists per game, also scores at 17 points a game clip, plays good defense, very, very high basketball IQ. His teammate Colton Smith, also another player of the year type of candidate. He is the toughest matchup of anybody in Class AA. 18 points a game last year, 9 rebounds, and that was as a sophomore. He's just getting stronger and stronger. Let's take a look at the rest of this list. Sam DeGroot is a 40% three-point shooter. He can drive, and the part of his game I really look for him to evolve is getting to the free throw line. So Sam DeGroot, a guy that could take over in those crunch time minutes for Lincoln. Landon Delaney, an athletic point guard. He's just a playmaker. 2.5 to 1 assist to ratio. Just a smart player on the court. That's what you need. Blake Elwine, we talked about him as a player of the year type of candidate. I think he's going to go for close to, if not over 20 points per game this year. Sam Erickson, another threat for Lincoln on the outside. Just a really good shooter on the outside who gives them options as well. Ryan Heinert, this is the guy I think not many people are talking about that need to talk about him. He is at 19.5 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. He is a leader. He is super athletic. Get a chance to watch Ryan Heinert of the Sturgis Scoopers, and your time will not be wasted. Daylor Segrist out of Stevens, another guy, this is a guy who shot 53s last year. He is a very dangerous shooter from the outside, can get hot in bunches, and will lead Stevens this year. And then Austin Terveen of O'Gorman. We have a couple players on O'Gorman who could do well, but I think Terveen takes that step up with his brother Caleb. Austin more the shooter, Caleb more the distributor this year. And then Jace Woods, another guy for Washington. There's plenty of guys for Washington. Tommy Hoffman, Jace Woods, 2 guys I expect to really take that step and be big-time scorers this year for Washington. All right, let's move into my secret picks. If you stayed with us this long, you're going to get paid off by getting some bulletin board material. My picks to win it all, and I'll give you a little hint. There's not a lot of number 1 teams in the preseason polls that I'm picking to be number 1 at the end of the year, but you never know. Let's start in Girls B. There's, again, so many good teams. I could see Ethan making a run. Centerville has got so much back, but I'm going to go for a surprise team here. I think the Lyman Raiders have what it takes. Jordan Scott has really come on as a good backcourt player for them that not many people expect to do well, but Max Scott also one of those players who just refuses to lose. I think Lyman could be that team we're talking about at the end of the season that hoists up the trophy. Let's talk about Girls A. My Pia Luta is my team. I tell you what, Jodine Big Crow, Jodine Hunter has done a fantastic job of being that second option. They're going to play a tougher schedule this year. I think that's going to pay off when they get to the state tournament, and they've got that state tournament experience as well. So my Pia Luta, my pick to win in Girls A. In Girls AA, it's really tough for me to pick anybody in this class because I could see O'Gorman doing it again. They come in as the number 1 team. If Sadie Merriman really comes in and solidifies that team as an extra star that they have, and Ruby Moore steps up her game to the places I think she can go, they seem like the team to beat. But there's something about that youth and coming together with that new team that I can't pick them to win it all. So I'm going to go with what I think is the next best team in the class, and that's Brandon Valley. And again, all that depth. You got the star power from Olivia Paget. You've got 3 players. You've got an inside game. You've got everything you need to make that run for Brandon Valley. I don't think they come out of the gates as the number 1 team. I think they finish as the number 1 team in the state at the end of the season. In boys basketball, I'm not taking, every year it's DeSmet and it's White River and it's some of these teams that we've gotten used to winning it all. Of course, Howard made that run last year in an epic game to win the championship. But I think it's Gregory, a traditional football school with so many seniors, so many players back, so much star power in the backcourt. Gregory is the team that's going to get it done in Class B. In Class A, I finally pick a number 1 team. I think it's Sioux Falls Christian. I think after the 25-1 season last year, they are refocused. They are just so good at all positions. Brant Wassner is another player I didn't talk about yet, but you will see that he is going to emerge as one of the best players in Class A to support Griffin Goodberry and Cole Snyder and all the rest of those players who do such a fantastic job. In boys AA, I also am going with the number 1 team. I think this Mitchell team is focused. They are good. I would watch out for Huron. If they can find a way to get some depth, they've got the star power at the top of this lineup. Not enough quite to get it done at all 5 positions quite yet. So I'm going to take Mitchell in this one to get it done. But that's why we play the games, folks. Thank you for tuning in to our December preview edition here on Inside the 605. I will be with you all season long. And as I said, the rest of the episodes will come out weekly starting in January. We'll have a coach on. We'll have Ryan Deal on every week. We will have top plays, top performances, and top games to watch in the upcoming week. We will be with you all season long. I'm Jason Andera signing off for Inside the 605.